All right, well, I'm going to keep you here, Caitlin, but we want to bring in federal defense attorney Ronald Chapman to join our conversation. And Ronald, as the jury prepares to deliberate, were there any major surprises you noticed from the readouts or any game changers from these closing arguments? Anything you didn't expect?
I think the biggest surprise, honestly, was De Niro showing up outside of the courthouse and reading his script to the crowd. But for closing arguments, I think that it went according to plan. I think the prosecution's closing argument was way longer than it should have been. I think they came in at around 5 hours or something like that. But with respect to the defense, it was pretty much exactly what we expected. It tracked the elements of the offense and the arguments that we would have anticipated. They have to prove that on or about a certain date, Donald Trump falsified a business record, made a false entry into a business record. Very important to point out the lack of evidence of Donald Trump actually making those entries. And very important to point out the fact that other people made those entries on his behalf. So I think the defense made a pretty clear closing argument, which I think will roll in their favor come deliberations.
Everybody knew that the credibility of Michael Cohen was going to be called into question for sure, but then it just sort of fell to bits when the defense did their cross-examination. The president's attorney calling Michael Cohen yesterday the MVP of liars, and even used a new GLOAT acronym calling Cohen the greatest liar of all time. But then you've got the prosecutor telling the jury, hey, the question is not if you like Cohen, but whether he has usable, reliable information that he was in the best position to know. In a roundabout way, is this saying this case is not about the star witness, it's about the former president? Which one do you think is the better argument here that's going to sway the jury?
You know, I think this goes to the defense because obviously the prosecution wants to try to insulate themselves from Cohen. But the reality is they used Cohen in an uncorroborated way in order to make several points in their case that were important. And what they really needed to do was find somebody to back up those points. The jury instructions are going to be very good here with respect to the defense and Cohen's testimony. The jury will likely be instructed that if they find that any witness intentionally lied, their entire testimony can be disregarded. And juries generally follow instructions. So what could happen is several or all jurors could say, we found Cohen lied about several things intentionally, and therefore we are going to disregard him. And then what is left when we remove his testimony from the case? That could be a very powerful impact come deliberations in Donald Trump's favor.
How crucial are the actual instructions that the judge will give to the jury? How important is that in determining the actual verdict that ultimately gets handed down? There's been a lot of talk about the way this is going to be delivered.
You know, I've been involved in a lot of trials, and we get questions that come back from the jury mid-trial, and that's really the only way that you can get a sense of what's happening in the room. But I can tell you this. Each and every trial that I've been involved in, the questions generally surround the jury instructions and interpretation of the jury instructions. This tells me that juries track very closely with the instructions. They understand that this is their IKEA manual, if you will, of how to put this case together. I expect that they will follow them very, very closely. I do think that there are some jury instructions here, principally the lacking the requirement to find the specific underlying felony that Donald Trump was intending to cover up. That's something that's going to roll in the prosecution's favor because the jury's not going to have to find that felony. But overall, the jury will follow these instructions to the extent that they understand them. And that is where the prosecution really needs to do their work, making very clear what the instructions say and what this case is.
All right. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. I think all of our seatbelts are all securely fastened. You're right, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride no matter what. Appreciate your time.